For decades, Leonardo DiCaprio has been branded as Hollywood's eternal bachelor. The headlines were relentless. A new model, a yacht, a party. It became easy to believe that love for him was fleeting. But beneath that image lies a very different story. Across 3 decades in the spotlight, there were 5 women who truly mattered. Some entered his life before the fame. Others stood beside him during its most blinding moments. A few walked away when their paths diverged, and one never left at all. They weren't tabloid distractions. They were turning points. Each of them reflected a chapter of his life, from innocence to glamour, from quiet bonds to emotional constants that defied time. So who were they? Which of these relationships shaped the man behind the legend? And why does one name still linger, decades later, in the background of every love story he's lived since? Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio grew up far from the polished image that would later define him. Born in Los Angeles in 1974, his childhood was shaped by the creative energy and chaos of the city. His parents, George and Ermeline, separated when he was just a year old, but they remained devoted co-parents. He spent much of his youth in a rough neighborhood near Hollywood Boulevard, surrounded by both artistic communities and the harsh realities of urban life. That mix gave him a sense of ambition early on. Acting wasn't just a dream, it was a way to climb beyond his surroundings. He began auditioning in the late 1980s, appearing in commercials and minor television roles. Casting directors noticed his intensity. By the time he landed a recurring part on the sitcom Growing Pains, he already stood out from his peers. Hollywood soon recognized that he wasn't simply another child actor. He carried emotional depth that made even small roles memorable. His film breakthrough came in 1993 with This Boy's Life. Opposite Robert De Niro, the young Leonardo delivered a raw performance that stunned critics. That same year, What's Eating Gilbert Grape confirmed his arrival. At just 19, he received his first Academy Award nomination. Suddenly, the industry and the public began to fixate on him. Fame came fast, and with it an intensity that few teenagers could navigate. As his career accelerated, his personal world began to shift. The circle around him tightened. Childhood friends remained close, but strangers flooded in, drawn to his rising star. Trust became more complicated. Privacy began to slip away. These early years built a foundation that would shape the way he approached every relationship that followed. The spotlight wasn't just bright, it was unrelenting. In 1996, Romeo plus Juliet transformed him from promising young actor into global heartthrob. The Baz Luhrmann adaptation gave Shakespeare's tragedy a modern pulse, and Leonardo's portrayal of Romeo resonated with audiences worldwide. Teen magazines crowned him the face of a generation. Paparazzi followed him everywhere. For someone barely in his 20s, the attention was overwhelming. Then came Titanic. Released in 1997, the film became a cultural earthquake. Leonardo's performance as Jack Dawson didn't just make him famous, it turned him into a symbol. Girls screamed his name outside premieres. Fans sent thousands of letters. Every move became public property. With superstardom came an invisible wall. People projected their fantasies onto him, but few saw the young man behind it all. By the end of the decade, Leonardo's life no longer resembled the one he had known as a boy in Los Angeles. The world watched his every step. Relationships would now unfold under scrutiny. The women who truly mattered had to see past the noise, past the headlines, to the person underneath. The stage was set for the first woman who would capture his heart before the fame consumed everything. Number 1. Before Leonardo DiCaprio became the world's most photographed bachelor, there was Kristen Zhang. Their relationship began in the mid-1990s, when his career was gathering momentum but had not yet exploded. Kristen, a model from Michigan, entered his life quietly. She wasn't chasing headlines, and she didn't arrive on a red carpet. They met through mutual friends, connected instantly, and formed a bond rooted in genuine affection rather than celebrity spectacle. She was by his side during his rise. When he filmed Romeo plus Juliet in 1996, she visited him on set, blending easily into his world without demanding attention. Paparazzi photographed them together in Paris, at premieres, and during downtime away from work. Unlike the flings tabloids later obsessed over, theirs had the rhythm of a real relationship. Friends described it as calm, authentic, and unpretentious. As Leonardo's fame grew, Kristen witnessed the change from a front-row seat. Crowds outside hotels multiplied. Every public appearance became a frenzy. Through it all, she remained a grounding presence. She knew him as the person he was before the hysteria. He confided in her about the pressures that came with sudden stardom, and she offered stability in an environment that was becoming more unpredictable by the day. In 1997, the year Titanic premiered, the couple appeared at several events together. Kristen was often described in the press as the one who truly understood him. Their bond represented a rare stretch of normalcy amid a storm that few young actors could fully process. She wasn't competing with his career, and he wasn't performing for cameras when they were together. For a brief time, their lives moved in sync. But the speed of his ascent eventually created a gap that love alone couldn't close. As the new decade approached, their paths began to diverge. Kristen valued privacy and a quieter life. Leonardo's schedule became relentless. Promotional tours, award shows, film shoots across continents. Their relationship ended in 1998. It wasn't marked by scandal or betrayal. It was a natural breaking point between two people moving in different directions. Years later, Kristen would speak candidly about their time together. She dismissed sensational tabloid claims, describing their relationship as youthful and sincere. Her perspective cut through the mythology that had built around him. She saw him not as a global icon, but as the young man she fell for in their early 20s. In many ways, Kristen represents the last chapter of Leonardo's life, untouched by the full force of celebrity. She knew him when his world was still manageable, when love didn't have to compete with flashbulbs and relentless media cycles. Their story wasn't built to withstand the machine that would define his future, but it left an imprint. She remains the quiet reminder of a time before everything changed. Number 2. By the time Leonardo DiCaprio met Gisele Bündchen, he was no longer a rising star but one of the most recognizable men in the world. The hysteria surrounding Titanic had settled into a steady rhythm of global attention, and his personal life had become a subject of endless speculation. Gisele, meanwhile, was transforming fashion. Born in Brazil and trained in a strict modeling regimen from a young age, she had just broken through internationally. By the late 1990s, she was a force, credited with reviving the modeling industry and bringing back glamour after the grunge era. When their paths crossed in 1999, it felt like two worlds colliding, Hollywood's golden boy and fashion's reigning queen. Their relationship quickly became one of the most talked about pairings of the early 2000s. They weren't hiding from the spotlight, nor were they chasing it. Together they embodied effortless glamour. Red carpets, charity events, environmental galas, wherever they appeared, cameras followed. Yet beneath the surface, their connection was built on more than appearances. Friends close to them often remarked on their shared values, especially their interest in environmental causes and personal growth. Both were young, ambitious, and aware that their fame carried weight. Gisele brought a new energy into Leonardo's life. She was independent, grounded, and had already built a career on her own terms. Unlike many who entered his orbit, she didn't seem intimidated by the glare of his celebrity. She matched it with her own. They traveled extensively together, from ski trips in Aspen to quiet getaways in Europe. Public fascination grew, but they maintained a degree of control over their narrative. For several years they appeared inseparable. As their relationship matured, subtle differences began to surface. Gisele was entering her mid-20s and starting to reflect on her life beyond modeling. She embraced wellness, meditation, and sought a more balanced existence. Leonardo, though deeply involved in environmental activism, was still living at a faster pace. The gap between their personal evolutions widened slowly but steadily. By 2005, Gisele made a decision that surprised the public but was clear to those close to her. She ended the relationship. Her reasons were personal, not dramatic. She wanted a life that aligned with the inner growth she was experiencing, and she sensed Leonardo wasn't in that space yet. It wasn't about conflict, it was about timing. She later spoke openly about needing to make changes in her life to find clarity and peace. Their breakup marked the end of an era. They had become a cultural symbol of young, beautiful, and successful love. Fans assumed they were destined for permanence. Instead, their story reflected a moment when two extraordinary lives ran parallel, then gently diverged. For Leonardo, the years with Gisele represented a rare partnership, where glamour met genuine connection. For Gisele, it was a significant chapter that preceded her next life stage. Their relationship remains one of his most iconic, one built on shared values, intense public attention, and the quiet realization that love sometimes ends not through failure, but through growth. Number 3. When Leonardo DiCaprio began seeing Bar Raffaele in the mid-2000s, his public image was still defined by intense scrutiny. Yet this relationship unfolded differently from those before it. Bar, an Israeli model with a growing international career, entered his life not with fanfare but with ease. Their connection formed after his split from Gisele Bündchen, during a period when he was focusing heavily on his work and personal interests away from constant media cycles. Bar brought calm into a world that rarely allowed for it. They met at a party in Las Vegas in 2005 and quickly developed a bond. What set this relationship apart was its deliberate quietness. Both valued privacy, and their time together often happened far from red carpets. They vacationed in Belize, visited her family in Israel, and spent long stretches away from Hollywood. These choices weren't about secrecy for spectacle's sake. They were about preserving something real in a space that often devoured intimacy. Throughout their years together, Leonardo's career entered a new phase. He embraced roles that defined his adult acting identity: Blood Diamond, The Departed, Revolutionary Road. While his professional life demanded intense commitment, Bar provided stability without competing for attention. She understood the demands of fame because she was navigating her own. That shared understanding allowed them to exist without constantly feeding public fascination. Observers noted that their relationship seemed mature and measured. There were no dramatic headlines, no explosive fallouts. When they were photographed, it was usually in quiet settings, attending basketball games, walking through airports, spending time on beaches away from crowds. Friends described them as deeply comfortable together. For Leonardo, who had spent so much of his adult life performing under a spotlight, this was a reprieve. They dated on and off for several years, separating briefly in 2009 before reuniting. Even that pause wasn't marked by spectacle. It reflected two individuals with demanding lives trying to find alignment. By 2011, they decided to part ways for good. The breakup was mutual and respectful. Neither offered public drama. They simply acknowledged that their paths were heading in different directions. Bar later reflected on that period with a sense of gratitude. She described it as a time of growth, one that happened without bitterness. Their relationship didn't leave behind the kind of lingering public mythology that his earlier romances did, but it carried significance in its quiet strength. It represented a period when he balanced global fame with something resembling normalcy. This chapter in Leonardo's romantic history is often overlooked precisely because it wasn't designed to generate headlines, yet in many ways it was one of his most stable partnerships. Away from the noise, they built a bond that lasted longer than many expected. When it ended, it did so without rancor. Two people who had shared meaningful years and moved forward without spectacle. For Leonardo, Bar Raffaele was not a headline. she was a steady presence during a transformative stage of his life. Number 4. When Camilla Morrone entered Leonardo DiCaprio's life, it marked the beginning of a relationship that surprised both the media and longtime observers. By then, he was in his early 40s, established as one of cinema's most respected actors, with decades of global attention behind him. She was a rising model and actress in her early 20s, beginning to carve out her own career. Their age gap became a topic of fascination, but behind the headlines was a partnership that lasted longer and ran deeper than many expected. They were first linked in late 2017, but their connection stretched back further. Camilla's stepfather, Al Pacino, had known Leonardo for years, and they moved in similar social circles. What began as a quiet companionship gradually became something significant. By 2018, she was accompanying him to major events, and their appearances together signaled a shift. This wasn't a fleeting romance hidden from view. It was visible, consistent, and lasted through some of the most intense years of his later career. Unlike earlier relationships defined by the glare of red carpets, Camilla often joined him in more personal settings, charity events, environmental initiatives, and extended vacations with close friends. She fit into his world without competing for the spotlight, yet she didn't fade into the background. Her own ambitions in acting and modeling gave her a clear identity, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. Observers noticed how relaxed Leonardo appeared in her presence. Their life together was marked by familiarity rather than spectacle. Their relationship unfolded during a transitional period for Leonardo. He was working on major projects like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and continuing his environmental advocacy with renewed focus. Camilla became a steady presence throughout this period, accompanying him to events that mattered personally rather than just professionally. They spent holidays together, mingled with family and longtime friends, and maintained a rhythm that suggested stability. For a while, it seemed as though the relationship might defy the narratives that had followed him for decades. They spent nearly 5 years together, an unusually long span in his romantic history. She turned 25 in June 2022, and that summer, reports of their breakup began to surface. Media outlets reignited familiar discussions about his patterns, but those who knew them described the separation as natural rather than dramatic. Their lives were evolving, and their paths began to diverge. Camilla handled the attention surrounding their relationship with remarkable poise. She rarely addressed it publicly, focusing instead on her career. When their time together ended, there were no public arguments or sensational claims. It simply concluded as two lives moving in different directions after years of shared experiences. This relationship stands out not for its controversy, but for its longevity and maturity. It represented a later chapter in Leonardo's life, where stability seemed within reach. Camilla Morrone was not a passing figure in his story. She was a significant presence during a period when his personal and professional worlds were fully formed, and she became part of both with quiet strength. Number 5. Among all the women connected to Leonardo DiCaprio's life, one stands apart, not as a former partner, but as a lasting presence. Kate Winslet entered his world during the filming of Titanic in 1996. She was 21, already respected for her dramatic work, while he was stepping into the role that would define his career. Their connection began on set, not through romance, but through a shared understanding of the intense spotlight they were about to face. That bond would become one of the most enduring relationships of his life. Filming Titanic was grueling. The set was physically demanding, the pressure immense, and expectations overwhelming. In that environment, Leonardo and Kate developed a trust that went beyond professional camaraderie. They supported each other through long days, demanding scenes, and the uncertainty of what the film's impact would be. By the time the movie was released, their friendship was solid. When the world turned them into icons overnight, they navigated it side by side. As years passed, their bond never wavered. While Leonardo's romantic life shifted through different chapters, Kate remained a constant. They reunited on screen more than a decade later in Revolutionary Road, a film that explored the complexities of love and disillusionment. During press tours, both spoke openly about their deep affection for one another. Kate described their relationship as one built on absolute trust. Leonardo often referred to her as one of the closest people in his life. Their connection was personal, rooted in shared experiences rather than public performance. What makes their relationship so striking is its consistency. In an industry where friendships often fade under pressure, theirs grew stronger. They celebrated milestones together. When Kate married Ned Rockroll in 2012, Leonardo walked her down the aisle. Over the years, they attended each other's premieres, cheered each other's achievements, and stood together during moments of personal change. There was never romantic speculation between them that stuck because their bond transcended that narrative. It wasn't about denial, it was about something different, an enduring, almost sibling-like closeness. Fans often romanticize their dynamic, imagining an untold love story that never happened. Yet their connection carries a depth that doesn't require that framing. Kate has described Leonardo as family. He has called her his rock. In Hollywood's shifting landscape where relationships often blur or fade, theirs remains defined and unwavering. This bond provides a rare insight into Leonardo's emotional world. Through every stage of his career, Kate has seen him at his most unguarded. She witnessed the young actor navigating sudden fame, the seasoned performer refining his craft, and the global figure balancing intense scrutiny with private loyalty. She has been a witness to his evolution without ever being eclipsed by it. For Leonardo, Kate represents something unique: constancy. She's the emotional anchor who existed before, during, and after every romantic chapter. While other relationships have begun and ended, hers has remained intact. She embodies the enduring connection that neither fame nor time could fracture. Across 3 decades in the public eye, Leonardo DiCaprio's love life has been dissected, simplified, and often misunderstood. Yet behind the tabloid image is a series of meaningful connections that mirror the evolution of his life. Kristen Zhang reflects the years before the world claimed him. Gisele Bündchen represents glamour and shared ambition. Bar Raffaele brought stability during intense professional growth. Camila Morrone marked a mature chapter in his later life. And Kate Winslet stands apart, representing unwavering emotional loyalty. Each woman reflects a different era, each relationship shaped by timing, circumstance, and personal growth. Together they reveal a man whose romantic history is far more layered than headlines suggest. These are not just names linked to fame, they are the markers of his personal journey. For more emotional stories, check out this video.